we need to absolutely reform the entire education system. And they have given reasons. They said there is changing employment landscape and the global ecosystem. And as Kapilji has rightly mentioned, the students not only have to learn, more importantly today is they have to learn how to learn. And that's doesn't happen in the mainstream education system. I have been vice chancellor, in charge vice chancellor of two universities. One, your neighbor, the Vikramasimhapuri University, and the other in the Rayalaseema. For quite some time, for administrative reasons, I was given the VC in charge post, and I've seen how badly the universities are being managed. The the entire ecosystem that exists in the present universities is just an extension of the same kind of schooling, the senior secondary and the degree colleges, and the same thing extends to the universities. We are just pushing that inefficient system right up to the universities. And as we see, I've actually gone through some of the PhD theses, and I was shocked. And in fact, I had to show it to the Honorable Chief Minister in one of the review meetings, saying that this is what our universities are producing. That particular piece of PhD thesis was approved by 3 external examiners, all 3 of them doctorates. That student was guided for 7 years by another PhD professor, and the output is extremely shabby. The PhD topic itself was irrelevant, and the report was full of horrible mistakes, including grammatical mistakes. And to say that Honorable Chief Minister was shocked is again an understatement. It was an eye opener for many of us. The rot, of course, starts much earlier, and as the special CS for school education, in fact, this is our biggest concern today. How do we, as Kapilji mentioned, how do we bring in more of issues, life skills into our curriculum, into our mainstream schooling? How do we change our teachers from being lecturers, they are literally lecturing, to becoming, I would say, what Anand has done, being coaches or facilitators. I mean, that's really what should happen in an education institution. Every child comes with tremendous knowledge. In fact, there has been a debate as to learning loss in the last 2 years, and somebody has come up with this brilliant analysis saying that even during this pandemic, even though students have not gone to a school and learned in a traditional way, they have learned many things even at home. They have seen, I would say one example is what is oxygen. We just learned oxygen is O2, and we do some experiments, but then we never knew in real life what that oxygen does. And during pandemic, in fact, this virus has been the best teacher, I would say. It has taught us a lot of things, and one of them is how important is this oxygen. So many of the students would have seen, of course, not pleasant, may not have had pleasant experiences, but they were learning. Even during that pandemic time, they were learning. So when the educational institution should build on that, build on those experiences, and then provide them the life skills that is extremely important to survive, as you rightly said, in a very competitive, a very complex world. 2030s, 2040s are going to be dominated by, the IT revolution that is taking place. We don't know what AI is going to do, and definitely AI is going to replace a lot of jobs, traditional jobs, and are we preparing our students to fit into this new profile that the global ecosystem is actually looking for? But again, I would say another important factor is the climate change. Climate change is also changing the entire landscape, and do our kids know about about the climate change and its and its impact? Again, I would say we are not preparing our students, our future citizens, to cope up with all these challenges, and I think in that context, I think there is an extremely important context for reimagining the entire, not just the higher education, but the entire education system. And I think, and I completely agree that liberal arts, though a Google search about liberal arts in India, gives you all kinds of information, which is, I think, partially correct, but we need to really make our students understand the importance of not looking at knowledge in terms of a job. The biggest mistake that we have done in our country, and more so in AP, is to design a system which is always looking at the end. And therefore, as I've said, the tail wags the dog, and our entire system is catering to making our students do that rote learning, to become experts in speed testing, which is not actually needed. Today, I would say Shakuntala Devi, the great mathematician, the late great mathematician, is actually not relevant, because nobody needs to know the value of pi. It's there if you're on a click of a button. So that doesn't test anything about you, and it's not needed. Everything is there. But as the need of the hour is, how do we make our students learn how to learn? How do you make use of this vast array of softwares that are available, starting with Google search, and then how do you use Wikipedias to enhance your knowledge? Of course, we have done a little bit in energizing our textbooks. Today, all our textbooks are energized. We have allowing, of course, again, it's availability of a smartphone to know more about a topic. But then again, the issue of digital divide comes, and how many of our students have such devices to go into the details. So I would say that time has come, and that's the reason why I, as the head of the education department in the state, is looking for alternatives, looking for the right kind of education, the curricula that we need to impart to our students, because our honorable chief minister is extremely clear about producing global students from Andhra Pradesh. He wants, and that's the reason why he had gone for a big shift in converting all the schools into English medium. Because go anywhere, go to Thada, near to your place, and ask those fishermen families, and they are going to say that they are willing to send their child to 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers away if there is a school which teaches English medium uh, to his or her child. Um, that's because that's the aspiration, and an entire education system. In fact, this is clearly mentioned in the NEP that the past, even the 1986 NEP, if you look at, the whole focus was on access. But that was what was required at that time. So we had to build, schools everywhere, not really bothering about the quality of transaction that happens in that school. Today, because of that one policy decision, we have 35,000 primary schools in the state. We have roughly about 17,000 villages, 13,000 gram panchayats, and we have 35,000 schools. And imagine 35,000 primary schools providing 5 teachers, paid at an average of, the starting salary is of 40,000, average salary is about 75 to 80,000. Just do a, back of the envelope calculation. It's just not possible. It's impossible. And these brick and mortar schools have to be maintained, have to be whitewashed, provided benches. There are a lot of things that have to be done, and that's the reason why if you see a typical government school, you'll find it not having toilets. You have a dilapidated building, and that's the reason why our honorable chief minister, he has prioritized that education is most important, and you would have seen our flagship program of Nadu Nedu, where we are trying to, we've developed 1/3 of the schools and 2/3 have to be done now. But just that one intervention costed us nearly 4,000 crores just to provide 10 basic elements. We've just provided toilets, drinking water, fans, lights, kitchen. That's it, and that costed 4,000 crores. So it's even for the governments to provide quality education as NEP and SDG envisages. It's not a cakewalk. I mean, it's going to be tough mobilizing that kind of funds, and it's good to see states like Delhi, Kerala, Gujarat, and recently Telangana have recognized the need for improving the education system, and they are investing in infrastructure, investing in providing online, investing in digital equipment. We are talking about PAL system, personalized adaptive learning, to be introduced in our schools. A lot of exciting things are happening, but then whether along with it, I personally feel that there is a need for reimagining this entire education system to cater to the objective of if you really want to produce global students from our state. I think there is an abject necessity to revamp, to bring in reforms, and I'm happy to share with this audience that our honorable chief minister is exactly thinking on those lines, and that's the reason we want to partner with Korea University and take this form of providing knowledge, providing skills that will make our children, students, able to navigate this complex world. Today, we are just producing students to navigate the IIT entrance exam. Just that one goal. How do we navigate that entrance exam? Nobody asks. In fact, many of these students actually don't know what's happening, around them. They don't know who is the president, who is the prime minister. They don't read books. They don't play sports. There are no games. In fact, one such corporate college I sort of raided. I found there was a section called IPL. That particular section is called IPL, just to give that kind of competitive sort of desire in the students in that section. They are all the potential IITians, and therefore that section is called the IPL. And they don't do, in fact, I've asked the student what kind of sports they play. Only one student raised his hand, and I asked him what sport does he play. He said he does treadmill. Even the treadmill, that time he's on the treadmill should not go waste. So there is a book placed in front of him. So he keeps studying while doing that 10 minutes or 15 minutes of treadmill. I've asked those management why they don't, make them play or do at least yoga on a Saturday, Sunday. They said, no, we can't waste even a minute. The students have to, avail every minute of their life for those 2 years and then learn how to pass that, the exam. I think time has come to demolish such education business models and then bring in, liberal arts, bring in new way of thinking, make our students not, at the tender age of 10, 12 years to already dream themselves sitting in an IIT or becoming an engineer, but to learn, be at the moment, learn things, learn, why the ball falling and the moon staying at that place, both are because of one critical phenomenon called gravity. That's the, I at least that's my or our collective vision for the state of Andhra. And I think I'll stop here, and I once again thank Dr. Rangarajan, Mr. Kapil, Rachna, and all the faculty of Kriya for giving me this opportunity. I think a lot has to be discussed. And as I've said, this is the first step in having a long-term partnership between the government of AP and Kriya University. And as I've said in the beginning, I would like to visit the campus as and when you are ready to invite us. So thank you so much. And I hope all the 192 participants will benefit out of this webinar. Not just my insights, but I'm told that there are good panels discussing on very critical issues. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Mr. Rajshekhar, if I can just request you to be here for a second. If this was a stage in person, you would have taken a photograph, but now we will make do with a screenshot. So Rachna, if I can request you to spotlight Kapil and Dr. Rangarajan in one frame with Mr. Rajshekhar, we can take a good screenshot. Your best smile, gentlemen, your best smile.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rajshekhar. I couldn't imagine a conversation that will potentially have everything ranging from climate change to SDGs to digital divide to AI. I think it's such a interrelated topic that you brought on. I think education at the end of the day sort of hits upon each of these and takes us towards the right direction in this complex world. And something that I could take away was definitely the fact that we have evolved as a system when we know that we study to study and not study to work. And ultimately, the future of education is something that will make someone a fully aware citizen more than anything else. I think that's something that I could clearly take away. Thank you so much for the insights from your experience once again. Without further ado, I'd like to call upon Professor Mahesh Rangarajan. Dr. Rangarajan is a historian of modern and contemporary India with a special interest in environmental history. He has a BA Honours History from Hindu College, Delhi University. He was also a Rhodes Scholar back in 1986. His MA in Modern History was from Balliol College and his doctorate from Nuffield College, both at Oxford University. His first book was Fencing the Forest, and the most recent one was back in 2015, that is Nature and Nation. He also edited many works and was the co-editor of the first 3 volumes of the selected works of C. Rajagopalachari published by the Orient Black Swan. Dr. Rangarajan has also served on several editorial teams of 2 popular journals in specific, and in 2010, he also chaired the Elephant Task Force of the Government of India. It is my privilege to give you the stage here, sir. Professor Rangarajan, it's all yours.
Thank you. Respected Mr. Rajshekhar Garu, Mr. Kapil Vishwanathan, many of the distinguished educationists, friends. I did a BA in Hindu College in the 1980s, and I do want to say I relate very well to 2 very important points Mr. Rajshekhar made, that education in India has often got reduced to a race for entry. And the world I grew up in is not so different from the one he described, where the magic word was IIT. And I still recall our school getting 2 days holiday because so many of the students, it was a boys' school, had gotten to IIT. Their names were read out. We clapped. I remember because 2 holidays is always welcome in school. The other is that I do agree that a degree is often seen in India as a guarantee of not of education, but of a job. And the new education policy has taken a very important step because it tells us about the need for a holistic education. Education prepares you not only in your discipline, but in an interdisciplinary way to think beyond your discipline. This doesn't mean you give up your discipline, but you learn to think beyond the boundaries. The other, of course, is the new education policy emphasizes that you have to be a better citizen in a new and changing world. So there is an ethical dimension. In one sense, Kriya is only one of 4,000 universities in India. So one question we are asked very nicely is, why have 4,001? Maybe it's 4,002. One of the ideas which is central to Kriya and articulated so very well in the new education policy is that it is university with a difference. The difference is we are not only training people with a degree, we have the BA and the BSc. We are hoping that we train them in a different way of thinking. One of the ideas about education, widespread across the world, and which has had many precedents in India, is that education not only makes you a better human being, but teaches you how to think. One thinks of Shantiniketan, founded by the great Gurudev Tagore, and a very important initiative in pre-independent India within Andhra in Warangal by Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, who was a philosopher. He taught at Oxford. He was ambassador to Soviet Union. He was to become vice president of independent India and finally be the Rashtrapati. So I think I want to emphasize that Kriya is not about liberal arts education. It is about interwoven education, which is a different way of looking beyond disciplines. Within this, there are the sciences, physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology. There is literature and the arts, which includes, of course, literature. And there are the social sciences and humanities. I'm reminded of something very important because Rajshekhar Garu ended and began with 2 huge transformations of our time. The reality of the pandemic. We are told there may be more pandemics. There have been others in the past. And the pandemic, of course, comes because there is organisms such as viruses, which travel in the human body from other organisms. So there is no divide here between the human species and other species. We think of friendship of our species with others, but this virus which affects us affects others. A zoologist friend told me the other day that while humans are not so affected by Omicron virus, species like snow leopard, very rare creature, have died in zoos due to the same Omicron virus. Similarly, the other is climate change. where changes within any one country, the way we burn fuel, find the energy to heat this room, find ways to cook our food, find ways to pump water out of the ground, find ways to travel from one place to another, that energy generates various gases. And the way they're being generated may change the balance of the different chemical compounds in the atmosphere in such a way that affects the process of life itself. So Kriya, in preparing people to deal with an uncertain world, wants to train people how to think, not what to think, but how to think. So one of the features in Kriya is that our entrance is not based only on the class 12 exam. We have an essay, we have an interaction. And the first year, you learn a range of subjects. We call it core and skills, but it includes the environment, it includes design thinking, it has exposure to ways of science, to ways of the arts. I was very struck by the point on mathematics, because to me, mathematics is not only about a tool of analysis, it is the language of nature. You know, nature has many languages, but mathematics is common. The equation for pi is the same in Central Africa, Central Asia, or for that matter, Central Europe. So the sciences, the arts, the humanities, each is important in its own way. This is very different from a world where we only celebrated those who went to IIT. We are proud of them, as we are proud of those who do medicine. We are proud of those who study law, and we should be proud and respectful of those who study commerce. But surely one should keep in mind, and I do want to emphasize, 1 out of 3 jobs in the organized sector in India are in government. If we look at Mr. Rajshekhar and his colleagues, you will find many people who studied different subjects. How is it they became good administrators? They were taught how to think. It didn't matter whether they studied physics, philosophy, literature, or history, but they were trained how to think. The other, and I think this is crucial, is that today's corporate world and the worlds of business are transforming beyond recognition. And many changes have been brought by people who understood the importance of that place where different disciplines intersect. You think of Steve Jobs, very important point. He said, my company was founded in California, where humanities intersects with technology. Now, this is a very unlikely figure for a historian to quote. The other point, of course, is that literature and the arts are especially important because while the world is very diverse, one of surely the ways of bridging conflict and ensuring cooperation is we learn how other people think. There are many ways of thinking, and we need bridges across them. I do want to emphasize that for Kriya, being in Andhra Pradesh is very special in many ways. Just as there is a very important scheme of Nadu Needu with schools, Andhra leads India in government working with farmers in sensitive ways of agriculture, with ecologically sound agriculture, which will tap new markets because it will not have pesticides, but it will have less impact on the soil and the water. Andhra also has the Nagarjuna Sagar Srisalam Tiger Reserve, where there are chenchus and tigers who are trying to live together. It has a vast coastline, so it gives us a sense of India as part of the greater Indian Ocean with long routes of trade with Southeast Asia. So Kriya is here to prepare students along with teachers, researchers, scholars to live in an uncertain world, to make a difference in that world. I want to end with an anecdote of the great astronomer Carl Sagan. His parents had emigrated from Germany. His grandfather couldn't speak to him except in German, and he had to reply in English. So the grandfather said, Carl, what will you do when you grow up? He said, I want to be an astronomer. The grandfather thought and said, very good. So he smiled. Then he asked the interpreter, please ask him, what will he do for a living? So I think it's very interesting. He became a very great astronomer, professor at Cornell, produced great TV series. He was known as the showman of science. So it's very important to make a living. And I must emphasize this, the great success of state like Andhra Pradesh in this huge expansion of education, opening doors to students from communities, groups who have never had the privilege of education before. And I must say, I'm very happy to say, in Kriya, if you see our intake, large numbers of the students are women. Across India, 60–65% of the undergraduates are women. To me, this is very important. These are many women are from communities or from backgrounds where women did not go to college. They are the future of the country. And for us to make the future, this new kind of education, which teaches people how to think, not what to think, which respects all disciplines, but then the student chooses the discipline. So you're a physicist or a mathematician, but you have a respect for the other disciplines. You're able to draw upon them. You're able to communicate with them. I also want to emphasize the word interwoven. You know, interwoven becomes like a carpet. The carpet has many different threads, but they make a mosaic. So interwoven learning is a way we hope to prepare students for the future. And I must emphasize in respect of Andhra Pradesh that given the various policies of the government and the law, we have special place in our hearts, our minds for students of Andhra Pradesh. And our university hopes, not only through the students, but also through the scholars, to contribute in its own way to the progress of a very great state, which in many ways was and will be the jewel of India. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rangarajan, for your address and those inspiring words about thinking beyond boundaries and understanding the interwoven learning that we all need to inculcate in our lives. Good evening, everyone. I'm Smriti Venkatraman. I'm the student at Kriya University of the 2022 cohort. Before I introduce the panel, I would like to say a few words about the importance of the changing paradigm of higher education. Having this forum is a big step towards rethinking the conventional way of education to a more holistic and enriching development of intellectual and innovative capabilities of students. With the transforming education sector, students like me need to adapt and go with this very ever-transforming and transitioning world that liberal education provides us with a platform with from the very beginning. Today, we are joined by a great panel of experts that I have a privilege of introducing. Our first panelist is Mr. Srikankovanti, the president of ISMA. A little bit about him. He's the director of Kennedy and Next Gen schools in Guntur and Ongole in Andhra Pradesh. He considers himself as an educationist and a lifelong learner, envisioning the transformation of teaching dynamics and assessment systems for the benefit of the children. He's an alumnus of the University of South Florida, where he pursued his MS in engineering. Our second panelist is Ms. M. Narendana. She is an academic head at Daphne Civil Academy, who is currently doing her fellowship from IIM Ranchi on public policy and management. She has completed her schooling in Tamil Nadu, and she also works in NGOs for educating the tribal students and bringing them to mainstream development if they were isolated. Apart from this, she's also a classical dancer and awardee of Yuva Kala Bharati for her achievements in dance and sports. Our third panelist is Dr. Paral Kumar. She is the principal of Navy Children's School, Visakhapatnam. Her educational qualifications includes a bachelor's in home science, master's in food and nutrition, B.Ed and M.Ed from Annamalai University, M.Phil in education from Madurai Kamaraj University, and a PhD from Chaudhry Charan Singh University, Meerut. From a teacher to vice principal and assistant professor to principal, Dr. Paral has been rendering service for many years now. Honoring her contributions in the education field, Dr. Paral is holding the position of principal at Navy Children's School and has been awarded for being one of the 100 most effective principals of the country by Alert Knowledge Solutions in 2017. For her dedication and work and devotion to her duty, she has recently been awarded by the commendation by Flag Officer of Commanding in Chief from Eastern Naval Command, Visakhapatnam. Our fourth panelist is Professor Priti Datta Chandra Shobi, who is a divisional chair of Humanities and Social Sciences at Kriya University. He is a social historian, literary critic, and political commentator. He studied history and literature at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and at the University of Chicago, where he obtained his PhD. He was also a postdoctoral fellow at the same university. Professor Prithvi's research and interests include the history of dissent, Indian intellectual and religious imaginations, literature, and political theory. He writes extensively in Kannada and is a well-known Kannada columnist. Our fifth panelist is Professor Shivakumar Shinivasan, who is a theoretical physicist. He is interested in quantum and classical dynamics and statistical physics. He studied at IIT Madras and has attained his PhD, and then joined the Department of Atomic Energy as a scientist. He has also made consistent and significant contributions to the theoretical and experimental physics aspects of the operation and design modification of research reactors in Indira Gandhi Center for Atomic Research in Kalpaka. His interests include mathematics and the history of physics. Finally, we are joined by Bhakti, who is the Director of Outreach at Kriya and will be the moderator for this panel. A little bit about Bhakti. She's done her bachelor's in psychology from Ferguson College, Pune, and a master's in international journalism from the University of Westminster in UK. Bhakti has lived and worked in some of the major cities in the world. During her days as a journalist in London, she was selected twice to be part of a team of 6 journalists across UK to provide media training to the NATO troops stationed in Scotland. She also has a decade of experience in marketing with top Indian and international universities to formulate their outreach and marketing strategies. She's an avid baker and a trained Kathak dancer who's also passionate about animal and animal rescue. Over to you, Bhakti.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Smriti. And as always, we are very, very proud of all our students. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a pattern emerging in the event today, where our students are front and center of this conversation. And that's the Kriya way. Good evening once again, everyone, and welcome to the Art of Sciences Reimagining Indian Higher Ed AP edition. And I am Bhakti, as Smriti has already introduced you. I am going to address the elephant in the room, which is that we are 30 minutes behind schedule. And so we are going to get straight to the point, and I'm going to skip all my introduction and well-prepared notes, because I think the opening comments did tremendous justice to what we are trying to do today and take this conversation forward. So I don't think I can top that. It's a tough act to follow. So coming straight to the question of this obsession, right, of Andhra. And I mean, this is a national obsession, but we know that Andhra Pradesh is known for its obsession with engineering and medicine. I want to get a sense in this room from all of you. And, we can feel free to go first with the school leaders, and then we can go on to the Kriya faculty. Do you think that with the NEP and the advent of international education in India, that the tides are changing slowly but surely? Or do you think that the obsession continues with engineering and medicine and shows no sign of abating? So Dr. Paral, why don't we start with you, please?
Sure. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. See, with the changing world, we have faced COVID. If we don't mitigate to the trends, how things are coming, we'll be left behind. We all know with the NEP, things are changing. We are, not just fixed onto sciences or to humanities alone. We are looking for a combination of subjects. So that's something which is very peculiar of NEP. And we also are looking forward for things where our students become confident, they have problem-solving skills, they are analytical, trends are changing. The parents, of course, looking forward for them to IIT and NEET is definitely fine, because we looking for job security of the child and the money part of it. This kind of thing is assured when it comes to IIT and it comes to medicine. But nonetheless, now with the changing world, we have so many jobs coming up where we need to change our mind. We are definitely carrying the traditions, but we need to make traditions also now. Time has come. So in order to do that, we need to change. The system has to drift from these two areas to other areas as well. Now time has come where a lot of focus is on economics, on psychology, because there is a need. A lot of reference to data, analysis of data. So fields also are emerging, jobs also are emerging, which was not there in our ancestors' time. So they could think of these two best, but now we have so many bests coming up. So I think there has to be a change, which, all of us need to accept. If we continue with the tradition of a lady taking care of the house, we wouldn't have, had women getting into so many jobs as they are getting it now. So I do respect traditions. I do, carry them. But of course, it's time to change now. It's time to change.
Thank you, Dr. Paral, and I appreciate the brevity and the clarity of the thoughts that you shared with us. And I agree that, we have no choice but to keep up with the times, because the fact is that the world of work is changing, industry is changing, skill sets required at the workplace are changing. An engineer is no longer only required to understand how to code, but they need to have soft skills. They need to be able to be collaborative. They need to have cross-cultural sensitivity. But the question really is, and that's where I'd like to come to you, Mr. Koganti. You are the president of ISMA, and you are looking at hundreds of schools at once, right? And you understand the pulse. is this really percolating down to the parent and the student, what is actually happening in the world? Or is there such a blinker approach that we still have in families where they're really not in tune with what's happening in the world and what is the requirement of the 21st century in terms of skills?
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, our Education Secretary Rajshekhar IAS Garu has actually answered part of your question. And yeah, Team Kriya, Dr. Mahesh and Kapil, good evening once again. Things are changing, definitely. Parents are slowly understanding, and right now we have so many educators who are attending this webinar. Of course, the number of attendees could have been much more higher if if some IIT is conducting such a webinar, if the IIT brand is there. But still, people are changing. I mean, all the educators who are attending this webinar probably would have seen the kind of students Kriya is producing. And yes, Dr. Mahesh, when he told he has just started his graduation, of course, from Guntur, and even our first speaker, Khadija, again from Guntur, where I belong to as well. So there are many universities. Basically, people are able to understand how the universities and colleges abroad are coming with the advent of this IB and Cambridge curriculums also going in a faster pace in India. So these parents are the ones who are able to understand what this SAT or ACT or all these scores are doing, and the kind of universities like Kriya, for example, I mean, we know the Ashoka universities or the Jindal, Jim Premjis. I mean, much more universities apart from the St. Stephen's and the Lady Sri Ram colleges in Delhi, which produced highest number of civil servants to the country. As an association, because we belong to all the CBSE and ICSE schools in the state, we believe that we have more number of parents who are accepting that the world is changing, and that there are much more other professions other than this engineering and medicine, which normally the state board schools and the parents there would aspire to. And yes, we are trying our bit, but then we are very smaller in number, just like Dr. Mahesh has told, our 4001. So, I mean, like people like Rajshekhar sir, when they talk, I mean, because they belong to the government and they manage, and their words would speak louder, and the changes that has to come from the school level for people to understand might not be the parents, but then at least even if students are able to understand, and if they are able to be aware, I mean, if the schools are educating them about the various career paths that are there. And I mean, we know the world ahead. Rajshekhar sir has just told 2030s, 2040s, 2050s, where the present school going students would be working in their professional lives. And nothing is imaginable. I always tell my parents and students, see, one innovation like Google driverless vehicle will remove a lot of jobs and occupations. So there will be less orthopedic doctors or accidents or insurance people, drivers, traffic police. Lot of changes in the lives will happen with one innovation, which we have already seen, whether it's drones or the Swiggy, Zomato's, Rapido, or the Google Pay, everything which has changed the lives. So, and COVID is one fine example. Things are changing. We are hoping that, I mean, the cycle is changing. Like in the Esther years, our Gurukul system, and I mean, like it's all about the liberal arts, and of course, it's the interwoven arts and sciences in the past. But now that everything is, yes, in Andhra, it is all this IIT and medicine mania. And I have to admit that it is all our educators or the school managements and of course the corporates or whoever is to be blamed. We are part of it. So we are trying to set things better for our future children.
Thank you, Mr. Boganti. And I think the fact that ISMA has partnered with Kriya for this, collaborated with Kriya for this event itself is a huge testament to the fact that you're all in the change, and you understand that there is a change, and you want to be catalysts and also facilitate that information down to parents and students. And I mean, all the attendees that we have here today, all of you, you're teaching so many hundreds of students. So we really want you to take something very strongly away from this conversation. And we're going to try our best to hope that you get some takeaways. Yes, you raised your hand, Shiva. If I can just come to you after Ms. Mohan very, very quickly. And yes, Ms. Mohan, please go ahead and share with us your views on, do you really see it changing, or do you think it's a more large city phenomenon? It's not something that students still in tier 2, tier 3 towns are really thinking about, beyond engineering and medical.
Thank you, Shah. Respected Principal Secretary, Mr. Rajshekhar Garu, and the panelist members as well, governing council members and the educators of Andhra Pradesh, and to all the participants who are here, a very good evening once again. And I want to make it very short to the question, is there any obsession? I just want to give a small intro, because here at Daphne Civils Academy, when we started in the year 2016, management with a vision to bring out some change in the education. They have started with history, economics, geography as an option. At that time, when we were choosing the students, hardly 25 students have turned up. But later, when we did some workouts with the students in experiencing their learning process and all, we could able to see a lot of changes in the student, and we have created a different platform at the class 10 level, because during their schooling, they were not exposed to what is social studies and what is language. Simply, the so-called science groups, or the maths, physics, chemistry, or one more, botany or zoology, were introduced to them. Social studies as a subject or language as a subject is not introduced, is what I felt. As Rajshekhar sir was mentioning, they were not aware who is the President of India and who was the Chief Minister by that time. So when we worked on, when we worked with the students of 8, 9, 10, we could able to see a lot of changes and students getting transformed to understand what is arts. And they have started, because HEG, when the combination or when the arts group was introduced, we had good number of students for science students, for science group, and who are left out with no option to choose arts. But it has now changed completely, because we have made it from 25 to 250 right now. We have done a lot of groundwork here at Daphne Civils Academy in Rajahmundry, and we have also created a lot of awareness to the parents, because parents were in fear. What happens after their graduation? You are now putting them, giving them good quality education, but what after that? They were having that obsession. But we could able to show them the career path. We could able to show them law as a career option. We could able to see good journalists coming out. We could able to motivate them to enter into government sectors. Even these parents who are highly educated were not aware of the so-called streams. And slowly we have introduced with maths, history, economics, and political science as an option. And later to this, after this, at the same time when NET was introduced, we, our chairman here and our dean, Mr. Rajesh Kandala, all together have introduced one more stream called applied mathematics, economics, psychology, and social studies, business studies. With this combination, they want to bring up completely not a job seeker, a job provider. So this has transformed a lot of difference here at Rajahmundry and in and around, because residential matters during this pandemic time. So initially the obsession existed, but later I could able to see a lot of transformation in the parents who come. Initially, when I got an admission, when we take a child for an admission, we used to hear he's obsessed with mathematics. So we wanted HE. But now I hear parent and student asking, we want to become a journalist. We want to enter into NIFT. We want to go to foreign universities. So when I could able to get number of queries right now, really we feel happy that we have done little bit, our contribution from here at Daphne have done a big change in not inclining towards engineering and medicine. So this is what I, as an educator here, is viewing it.
Thank you. That's excellent. It's so heartening. I wasn't sure in which direction the first segment is going to go. I was half expecting that everybody's going to say there's still an overwhelming obsession. We are trying really hard. But what I'm hearing from the room so far is that no, things are changing, and that is extremely encouraging. And I also want to quickly, out of nowhere, this is nothing to do with the conversation right now, but Dr. Paral Smriti, the student who introduced this segment, this entire panel, is an ex-student of your school, of Navy Children's School.
I'm so proud of that.
So are we. We're really proud of her. And Mr. Srikant, I had to address that one point that you made about if this was an IIT session, you would have seen maybe 5 times the number. And, maybe if we did this 5 years ago, we would have seen less than half of this number. So, I'm really glad that we're making strides in the right direction. But yes, Shiva is the divisional chair of Sciences at CREA. And he has a very interesting role because he's in a university that interweaves arts and sciences. So Shiva, I know you had something to add. So before I go on to my question, we'd love to hear your comments. Please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to, maybe raising that hand was inadvertent. I really didn't mean to do that.
Oh, okay.
So raise my icons and in the process I click that. But I would like to add something to what other panelists were saying. If you now look at the kind of departments, as it is called in IITs, they have economics department, humanities, language. In fact, one of the best economics departments in the country is in IIT Kanpur. Okay, and the best psychology department is in IIT Delhi. Okay, so if parents are thinking IITs for engineering, it's not the case anymore. Probably parents have to be told IITs are actually venturing into these other so-called, soft disciplines. And the reason is not that they also want to have additional courses which will generate revenue. They see the relevance of these disciplines even for engineers. So engineers are supposed to take such a number of courses in these disciplines. And that IIT will not take up a discipline unless it is also employable. So now you don't have to worry whether psychology has employability potential or language has employability potential. The certification comes from the fact that these courses are now being offered at IIT. So this probably is what the message that we should give to parents. Look, IITs are offering these things. So be rest assured that all these disciplines have enormous employability potential. Yeah.
Thanks, Shiva. I think that's very useful.
And maybe one more I just add here.
Go ahead.
If you look at the faculty strength in the science departments of IIT, physics, chemistry, maths, 25% of them did their BTech in engineering, then moved into sciences. Okay, so that's the impact. Most of my friends in IIT Madras or IIT Kanpur, they were all engineers who sort of graduated into mathematics, physics, chemistry.
How proud are you of that? you look so happy when you talk about pure sciences, and I just want to sort of bring this conversation together where we say that okay, we are saying that the world is moving in a different direction, and parents are becoming more aware. However, still the concept of liberal arts or interwoven learning is still lost because many of them look at, okay, now humanities, we'll consider humanities. It's not such a bad option. And as a humanities student myself, I take great offense when someone tells me that, oh, you studied psychology and humanities because you didn't get good grades. And I'm like, I'm a merit list holder and I still chose to do psychology, right? So the point is that is not the case. It's a myth. So Shiva and Prithvi, as academicians and as faculty who are delivering this interwoven pedagogy of arts and sciences and interweaving them together in the classroom, could you shed some very clear light for our audiences on how does this work? So when we say interwoven, what does it mean inside the classroom as well as outside when we talk about, say, internship or career opportunities? How does it work? So Prithvi, if you want to go first, and then Shiva, we can come to you. Go ahead, Prithvi.
Thanks, Bhakti. It's great to be here with all of you and share some of our experiences. Bhakti, if I could, I just want to make a very quick point on the first issue that you discussed. Partly because Professor Rangarajan and I study how change comes about as historians. And I wanted to say that the obsession that we see towards professional courses is not specific only to Andhra Pradesh. It's something that we see across South India, particularly. I mean, you see this manifesting in different ways in other parts of the country as well, in Bihar, in Uttar Pradesh, and so on. So how will this change? I mean, this will not change simply because institutions or governments will make new policies, but the reality of our existence is changing. The need for a more diversified, or as you said, an interwoven approach to learning. So what do we mean by that? We are living in a period of such rapid changes that perhaps we have never experienced, not just in the last 6,000 years, but perhaps even in the last 100,000 years. So if that is the the rapidness and the pace of change in our lifetimes, it becomes very important for us to be ready to anticipate the direction in which changes are happening and be ready. And there, I think two things I want to say. Again, Mr. Rajshekhar referred to this, the role of the teachers inside the classroom. And one example that I want to give there is what is necessary now for all of us teachers is to have this capacity as well as the autonomy to recognize what each of our students inside the classroom needs to learn in order to face this changing world, and then come up with appropriate learning solutions inside the classroom. And this approach is very different from the way we have been approaching teaching thus far, where we see teachers as simply implementers of a textbook or a curriculum which is prepared somewhere else. And so this ability is something that we need to create, and whether if Andhra Pradesh government is serious about pushing reforms, that aspect becomes very crucial. This is precisely what we have tried to do at TRIA. Two examples that I'll give, right? All our colleagues are specialists in different disciplines, but they all work together. When I teach a first year course, I have a mathematician friend or a philosopher colleague, and an environmental studies colleague and a historian who come together to teach one course, right? So when we teach ethics, for example, so this collaborative spirit is extremely important. Professor Shiva and I often collaborate on not just in giving guest lectures in our in each other's courses, but also think about conceiving courses together. So that becomes the spirit of education. What is common between physics and history? On the surface, you won't find any commonality if you look at the textbooks. So it is this intellectual inquiry which then becomes really important for us. So it's in that spirit at TRIA, at a theoretical level, we offer about 300 courses to all our undergraduate students. Each one of those courses is open to any student, regardless of which discipline that they're studying. An advanced physics course can be taken by a literature major if that student has fulfilled some prerequisites. So this openness is something which needs to be built into the curriculum itself, into the structures itself, and that's where the reform begins. So let me stop there and hand it over to you.
Thanks, Prithvi. Go ahead, Shiva, please.
I don't have much to add to what Professor Prithvi said, but definitely, even at the school level, I think people should experiment. For instance, Prithvi talked about history and the hard sciences coming together. And I also see actually a practical aspect to this. In fact, I was telling to somebody else on the other day, maybe to Bhakti, I don't know exactly. 100 years back, 200 years back, without so much of technology, and these fellows were able to observe, distill the essence of the observation and convert them in what we call as the laws of science. Okay? So that is where actually, in my opinion, creativity is really flourishing. So if you understand that process, tomorrow when you encounter something else, then it is actually this creative seed that will help you to actually see through whatever you are observing and really distill out the essence of what you see. And so there is definitely even a practical aspect to learning the historicity of a discipline. So that's what I would submit.
Thanks, Shiva. Thanks. And I think some of the questions that were raised in the chat talked about how does a school in a small town in Nellore really train their teachers to be able to even think, let alone implement interdisciplinarity and interwovenness. And we know that it's so much easier said than done at the school level, especially in small towns and villages. With that, very quickly, I would like to, before we move to our last segment on actionables, right? I want to understand from, say, Prithvi and Shiva, that you have dealt with you've worked with a lot of different faculty from, all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of thought processes. Do you see that there are any clear ways in which faculty can be empowered, by the school in thinking in very small ways on how they can implement this in the classroom?
See, within a school, a conversation needs to begin about what, as a teacher, I see inside my classroom, the shortcomings that a student might, or a number of students might, shortcomings which might manifest in a number of students, and that is where changes could be brought about. So, I mean, for me, it's always, it often goes back to the classroom and what we see there. And we can then build on that and begin to see other, solutions which can be brought in. And there, I mean, we can have a longer discussion on the point that you were making about interdisciplinarity and disciplines themselves. One thing that we have tried to do at TRIA very self-consciously is actually to think about disciplines themselves in radically different ways. So there is, just to take my own discipline as an example, you can think about history as in a conventional manner, right, as political, diplomatic history, and so on. But the history that we sort of look at is something which tries to address climate crisis, tries to look at biology and take into account how something as a technique in genetics, like ancient DNA analysis, will tell us more about human past, how human beings migrated from one place to another, how crops and animals moved from one place to another. So this is today not knowledge that we only find in books. This is, I mean, today the advantage is that you have a lot of lectures, you have a lot of audiovisual material that can be mobilized. And one thing where, area where, CREA faculty can help actively, Andhra Pradesh schools is to bring together, collate such material and, work with Andhra Pradesh government on getting some of that translated even into Telugu. So those kinds of projects are quite important. So the bottom line for me is, how do we actually see disciplines themselves? So if you're seeing a discipline in an interdisciplinary manner, where discipline itself is intimately connected to a whole bunch of other, fields, it'll be fantastic. I mean, that will actually make the difference.
Thanks. And I think, Shiva, would you like to add?
Yeah, a few additional things which sort of, I think, enrich what Professor Prithvi said. One is, of course, to think how these disciplines come together and in CREA subconscious, as he said, so-called interwoven. I have a feeling once they pick up whatever they can up to 5th standard, starting from 6th, probably we should also teach them how to reason. That is one thing. Even in history course, our students learn how to reason. It is not that the collection of, when was Akbar ruling, when was Babur ruling. No, that our history is not that at all. These numbers you can Google will tell you. So you don't have to remember them. Rather, there are more important points that one has to stress, the notion of reasoning. I have a feeling this is something that is missing in practically every board, I can say, at least up to 10th, it is not there. And but kids are told these kind of stories, there are two doors, one is to hell, one is to heaven, one fellow is a liar, one fellow is always tells the truth. What question you would ask so that you can enter heaven? And this is precisely a problem of reasoning. But somehow we don't teach them how to actually go through steps and practical. I will say, this is the question you should ask. I think maybe we should make education a bit more fun and start with these kind of stories so that at that age, that's what will appeal to them. And it may not be very crucial, but I would also say at that age, students also would love to have a book which is very well printed. Okay. It should not be dull looking. And in fact, I have read certain books from some states which say, look at this blue color. Actually, the figure is black and white. But it refers to a blue curve on that figure and what is expected of the student. So we should avoid this, because at that age, we cannot expect them to really scrutinize and figure out, oh, here there is an error, a fallacy. We should never do that. So a thorough editing of these books and introducing reasoning right at 6th standard, at that level. I'm not saying they should be doing kind of logic that a computer scientist would do, but it is possible to introduce, and that will help them in any discipline that they study. Whether they do physics, chemistry, maths, history, social science, doesn't matter.
Thanks, Shiva. Yes, Dr. Paral, please go ahead.
The thing about interdisciplinary approach, CBSE has taken a small step where we have integrated project and we try to connect disciplines for them. And very beautifully, students also pick up, they try to relate art, music, chemistry, psychology, everything together and put up something. So that's been done from past 2 years as an important part for 6th to 12th. And I want to add one thing here. There was one student, I'm talking about 2016, 6 years back, where one student comes to me and says that, ma'am, my aim is to become a neuropsychologist. And will you help me? He was a humanities student with psychology. He says, I am gaining knowledge about psychology, but when it comes to biology, because I am a humanities student, now, how do you want me to pick up biology? How can I do that? So he said, can I join psychology and biology along? So that time, it was for the first time I got that question and I wrote to CBSE. It was allowed, that time, say 6 years, where liberal arts were not in that common, and CBSE did allow that child to go ahead with that combination, and the child is actually a very successful neuropsychologist now. So that way, small steps have been taken by the schools, I feel.
That's a really fantastic and solid example of interwoven learning, because psychology and biology, and that's a classic example. In fact, biology and psychology are one of the most popular majors and minor combination subjects at Kriya. And, I'd just like to take a minute to give a few more examples. Psychology and literature. When we ask teachers to think about how do you think this can be applied, right? Psychology and literature. It's got extensive applications in advertising. Similarly, psychology and economics, right? So psychology, economics, and literature together as a combination also play a very strong role in communications. So there are a lot of, we have students who say majored in psychology, minored in literature, and have said, okay, for our internship, when we have conversations with them, we try to identify industries that actually, and we are spoiled for choice because every industry needs a cross section of skills. So when we look at those industries, we are like, okay, you can either work in digital communications, you can work in advertising, you can work in journalism. There is no end to the possibilities. You can also work in consulting, and research is, of course, all transcending. You can do research in any area and combine any two subjects together. So with that, I'd like to, really come to the last segment, and I'm sensitive of the time. We have about 5-6 minutes, and I want to go around the room and get a sense of if there is one clear, actionable takeaway that you would want this audience to go away with, that is your advice to them on how they can, in their own small way, encourage parents and students to know more, learn more, and open their minds with respect to new possibilities, not just liberal arts, but new possibilities that the world has to offer. what would that be? And I'm happy to start with you, Mr. Koganti, and then we can go on to Ms. Mohan, and then we'll just work out to.
I wish all the schools and probably, if possible, even the government side. So we need to allow our children to take a psychometric analysis test to understand their skills, capabilities, and interests. So otherwise, it's always the parents' will and wish that, okay, go for IIT, just like even our Rajshekhar Garu told that at that time, whether it's him or me, we all have gone to the engineering unknowingly, right? But then last week, when I see my University of South Florida's news thing, there is this liberal, College of Arts and Sciences team, which used ecology to understand cancer, because one of the cancer care centers at my university is a very popular one in United States. And the liberal, the Arts and Sciences College team has used this ecology to understand, and that's a fine example of this interwoven learning. So the career counseling and talking about such examples and asking the children, asking the parents to understand the need and importance of a psychometric analysis test will definitely help. And now, as Dr. Parul has told, CBSE as well as even ICSE, ISC of course has about 33 subject choices, and CBSE has got almost like 60 if we include all the skill subjects at this point. So, a combination of psychology, business administration, economics, everything can make sense. So basically, we have to tell the parents, tell the public and society that the future is very unpredictable. So let the child take, an integrated approach, because they should have a basic knowledge. Just like you do at all the liberal arts colleges, where there is this minor and then the foundation and the major, of course, later on, unless they join the graduation, actually, I don't think the student would be in the right stage to understand or tell that, okay, I want to pursue a career in this one, or that this subject of very much interest to me. Basically, in school, what happens is the child tells, I like mathematics, or I like biology, I like social studies, because they like the teacher, not the subject. If the teacher is very good, they tell, I like this subject, particularly in grade 6 and 7. We see that they are actually not very good in that subject, but then because they like the teacher, they tell the subject is good. And the next year, they change the school, or the teacher changes, or the class changes, they lose interest. So that's what we have seen. So as a school leader, we always tell my friends in the other schools, as well as our parents and all, that the career counseling and the psychometric analysis test backed up, and these things are very much required at this point for our future children.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, Ms. Mohan.
Actually, when sir was mentioning it, we even have here psychology in our college. So student who come from the psychology background in 11th and 12th class, they even go to 10th class, as sir was mentioning, as psychometric test. They have the skill set papers. They just check over the things, and they have that in their practical learning. So that really made sense. And even the children of 10th and 9th class, they got connected, and they started analyzing what is this group, what is this subject. So it created an awareness, and thank you, Srikant sir, for mentioning it. And here, when I wanted to speak regarding this career opportunity, we had we are having good alumni forum, where they are now in their final year completion, and students who have completed their final year, who are now getting placed, as well students who are pursuing in good universities. They come for the interaction. They tell what is this courses, or because at the 11th and 12th class level, explaining them what is liberal arts, what is the career opportunities, really a tough task, because liberal arts, I as a faculty, to understand this took a lot of time. But to explain this to students at this very young age, it's really a tough task. So we had good alumni who come down to the college back. They explain the courses, they explain the opportunities, what is lying behind the graduation level, and what are the advantages, disadvantages, sufferings, and positives, analysis, all sort of things they discuss with their juniors. so that they get aware of the thing. So I see this as interaction forum was missing. And now that interaction forum gives confidence to the students to take to the next level. So here we have good students from Delhi University, we have good students from NLSIU, we have students from all the esteemed universities of India. So I'm so proud in telling that, and that creates good awareness to the student of 11th and 12th class to what career they have to choose in the future, because they have seen their seniors as well, they have seen the professions that they have chosen. So it will be good if at all the people from the profession come give an introduction about the career to the students and make them aware of, because I want to be an IITian. But when you question a child, what is IIT? They are simply messed up. So this would create a better platform to understand what are the career opportunity for the child specifically based on his or her skill sets.
Thank you, Ms. Mohan. I think you've made some very valid points, and I'm making notes of all the key takeaways that you're all mentioning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Given the the time that we have at hand, which is not much, I request the other panelists to also just very quickly and briefly give your last bit of advice in terms of how can schools do something to open the minds of parents and students, something more. So, and whoever would like to go on. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Paral.
Yeah, actually, the most important thing today is to unlearn, learn, and relearn. That is very important. And when it comes to students, we need to actually guide them that career is something which you should be very passionate with. And you should take it if you're really interested in. Parents also should understand to recognize the strength and the ability of the child. Just by pushing the child into something which the child may not be very familiar with or may not be very passionate with will lead to disasters later. So best thing is to be more encouraging with what is the strength of the child and what is the capability of the child. And of course, career choices, career guidance will help to choose our best, and identifying the talents. Teachers will be the best source providers of telling parents that this is a particular strength of the child, and there the child would be excelling if he goes into that particular field. So that way, I think we can really take care of the situation. Thank you.
Very succinctly shared. Thank you so much for that. Yes, Prithvi and Shiva, your closing comments, please.
Go ahead, Shiva.
I would just say that probably one message that we should give to all parents is allow your child to excel in whatever he or she wants to. And if you are really good in any discipline, I don't see any problem for career prospects of that child. So that is something that we can take for granted. Okay. So this is what we should strive to sell. And if there is enough, let us say, children want to take up literature, you will see automatically fantastic universities offering literature courses will come up. See, universities also respond to demand to some extent. Okay, so we should create that at school level. Tell children, go ahead and do whatever you want, but excel. So that's what I would say.
I want to sort of supplement what Shiva said by saying we should definitely encourage our children to excel in what they choose. But I think we also should tell them not to ignore other subjects. What I mean by that is, for a historian today, right? If I get a good history student, I want that student to be really good at maths, really good in chemistry, in physics, in biology, in environmental studies. Because today, if a historian is not capable of understanding what mathematical modeling is, that student is not going to be a good historian. Because we are looking at climate crisis and we are looking back at how we have used resources. Smriti and I spent the last 4 hours we just left our class at 5:20 and came here, and she presented she and her group presented on steam engines, looking at the physics of it, looking at the economic consequences of it. So there, unless they have that broad basis of knowledge, it becomes very difficult. So we should encourage them to get a good grounding in all disciplines, in all subjects. And that will help them to actually excel in one subject. And that is in some ways our approach at CREA as well. with our general education, and that's at the heart of any liberal arts program. Thanks, Bhakti.
Thanks, Prithvi, and thank you all. And I just want to sort of summarize and bring it together for our participants, because like we promised, we don't want to make this just another conversation without real takeaways. Before I give you those takeaways, I want to just quote very quickly a study done by Ernst & Young, FICCI, and NASSCOM. And it's called the Future of Jobs Report 2022. It was released in 2021. So one thing to note is that nowadays reports and researches that are being done are not predicting the future a decade down the line. It's literally like, okay, this is what's going to happen next year, right? And that's basically the kind of the speed at which things are changing in our world, and we need to keep up with it. You don't want to read this report in 2024. It'll be redundant. I'm sharing this report on the chat here, and it says two very interesting things I want to highlight. One is, this report says that 9% of the workforce, right, in India, we're talking about India, will be employed in new jobs that don't exist today. And this is 9% as of 2022. So 9% of our workforce in 2021 was going to be employed in jobs that don't exist at that point in 2022. 37% of the workforce will be deployed in jobs that have radically changed skill sets. So for example, if you think you as a journalist require only to speak well and read well, that's not true. You need to understand data, you need to understand ethics. There's a whole lot that goes into every discipline now. And 54%, of course, will continue to pursue the jobs that are not going to undergo any changes. So these are just quick highlights, but it tells you how much the world is changing at an annual pace, not even at a decade at a time. And with that, I want to leave a thought to the teachers in this room, that orient yourself to the scope of what the world has to offer, but not simply for, sharing job prospects and career prospects to your students. There are two ways of looking at it. Orientation to interwoven learning and liberal arts is for not just real world implementation of careers, but it's also for the learning experience that you can provide to students inside the classroom. And for that, there are 4 or 5 very clear things that you can do, and I will copy paste that also in the chat. 1, research the scope of your own subjects, right? Stay updated with what's happening in not just the world of history, but allied subjects, and keep yourself updated so you can have real life conversations, relevant conversations in the classroom. And I think promise you to some degree that students, you'll see lesser students falling probably asleep, and more students taking interest in doing their homework if you just make it a little bit more engaging, right? Collaboration within subject teachers. So in schools, what we don't see too often is a history teacher collaborating with a physics teacher, right? So see how you can find common projects to come up with for students that involve 2 disciplines, right? Or 3 disciplines. The third way that you can do this is inviting alumni, as Ms. Mohan said, invite alumni as well as professionals to talk about the range of courses and careers that they are pursuing, because what's better than first-hand experience? Seek support from universities, and that is where a university like Kriya comes in. It's not just about exposing them to the courses that we have to offer, but I'd like to take this opportunity to tell everyone, because we had a question saying, how can Kriya help my students and my school? There are many ways we can do that. 1, we can help you with professional development workshops, and we will work closely with ISMA to make that a reality in the next few months. Professional development workshops for teachers, skill development workshops for your students, and regular invitations to all Kriya activities, which are not just talking about Kriya. We're talking about what's happening in the world in general. And last but not the least, if you don't have a career guidance support system in your school, we would highly encourage you to have that. Psychometric tests are highly debatable. Many people think that they work, some people think they don't, but that's your call. But have a support system in your school for career guidance. And with that, I'm just going to end. I hope this was useful. I'm going to copy paste this in the chat so you can probably, hopefully, implement some of this in your own schools, and we'd love to hear from you if you do. Over to you now, students Charmika and Nandita. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you
For being here with us.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you so much.
Thank you so much for that very interesting panel. Good evening, everyone. I'm Charmika, a second-year student at CREA, and I'm extremely certain that the previous panel gave each of us very insightful perspective on reimagining higher education in India. And I sincerely hope that this students panel right here, consisting of Smriti, Advait, Nandita, Ravi, Lochna, and I, can help you gain a closer perspective from a student's point of view. But before we begin, I'd request each of the students here to introduce themselves. Which year are you in? What's your major? Etc. for the benefit of the audience. Smriti, why don't you go first?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Once again, I'm Smriti. I am the third-year student at CREA, and I'm currently pursuing a joint major degree in economics and environmental studies. I'm also doing a concentration in business studies, and I have a big passion for sports.
All right. Next, why don't we have Advait?
అందరికీ నమస్కారం. నా పేరు అద్వైత్. నేను హైదరాబాద్ నుంచి. నేను ఇప్పుడే క్రియాలో థర్డ్ ఇయర్లో హిస్టరీ ఇంకా పాలిటిక్స్ జాయింట్ మేజర్ చేస్తున్నాను. ఇందాక మన పృథ్వీ సార్ చెప్పినట్టు నా ఇంట్రెస్ట్ ఏరియా కూడా హిస్టరీని, డేటాని, హిస్టరీని, సైన్స్ని ఎట్లా కలిసి ఏదైనా కొత్త రీసెర్చ్ చేయడానికి.
Thank you, Advait. Ravi?
Hi, good evening. My name is Ravi and I'm a second year at CREA University. I'm majoring in economics.
All right. Nandita, you can go ahead next. We can't hear you. No.
I think Lochna can go next.
Yeah, Lochna, you can.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Lochna. As Smriti and Advait, I am also a third-year undergraduate student. I am doing a computer science major and chemistry minor and a math concentration at CREA. Yeah.
All right, and I'll go next. I'm Charmika, a second-year student at CREA, and I'm pursuing a major in economics with concentrations in computer science and business studies. And I'm super excited to see where this panel goes. We'll have Nandita joining us in a bit, but I would like to know, how aware or informed were you on the concept of liberal education in the first place when you were making a decision for your undergraduate, especially hailing from a state like Andhra Pradesh? What are your main sources of information that helped you research, and what were the deciding factors? Lochna, would you like to go ahead first?
Sure. So my father was the first one who got to know about CREA through the newspapers, and I didn't know anything about liberal studies. But since I was applying to a lot of universities, I thought, okay, why not? Why not apply to CREA as well? So after I got selected, I was assigned a mentor who works at CREA, so with whom I have discussed my concerns and apprehensions associated with the new curriculum. So that was when I started knowing what liberal studies actually is. And honestly, in 12th, I used to live in an ocean of uncertainty, not knowing what to pursue further. And this is also one of the main reasons why I chose CREA, because unlike other universities which ask you to declare your major at the very beginning, CREA gives you that flexibility, right, to choose to explore as many disciplines as possible first, and then make a choice that best aligns with your interests and the world outside. So this is something from my side.
All right, thank you. We have Nandita. Nandita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, hi. I'm Nandita. I'm third year CREA student. I'm doing economics major, math minor, along with a business concentration. So yeah, మీ అందరికీ తెలుసు, like obviously like ఆంధ్రాలో ఉన్న పొజిషన్ కానీ I'm not any less victim to all this whole engineering and medicine thing. I'm very much pushed towards engineering and medicine, but I wasn't really passionate about it. So ఏం చేయాలో ఎలా ఉండాలో తెలియని పరిస్థితిలో, so I was like introduced to the liberal arts, which my parents are obviously aware of. I'm not aware of it because my school didn't give me enough introduction to it. And I, as a student, was never aware of this whole liberal arts system. I was always like told about there are only two streams of education. It's going to be either engineering or medicine. And liberal arts isn't something that was highly respected. So then when I was told my parents, I don't want to do engineering, I don't want to do it because I'm not passionate about it. So then my mom told me, like, you know, there are multiple options. And I was like, no, I don't want to do liberal arts, obviously. Then she gave me the whole introduction of what liberal arts is, and it's not something what I actually think about it. And it obviously changed a lot for me.
All right, that's very interesting to know, because I come from a science MPC background as well, and I'm pursuing economics as my major right now. And that is like a whole shift in mindset. Okay, I think Ravi, you can go next. How did you know about liberal arts in the first place?
Okay, so for a long time, I didn't really understand what liberal arts education was. All I knew about it was that it would give me a degree of freedom over my courses that I wasn't going to get in a traditional university. And I learned this from college research over the internet. My family really wanted me to join Korea, and the college counselors in school told me that it would be a pretty good idea to apply. And ultimately, I joined the university because I liked the idea of being able to choose my courses in any which way that I wanted. And I wanted to be studying philosophy alongside economics. And I was pretty sure that this wouldn't be possible in most traditional colleges in the country.
Great. Thank you for that. I think we all relate to that situation. And Smriti, how did you get to know about liberal arts?
To be quite honest, I didn't know what liberal arts education meant in the first place. I always had this preset notion, like this is back 3 years, almost 3 years back, that, this was mainly for those people who didn't know where their life was going. It's just like, it's just like you'll get a random degree of whatever you want to do. And it's not meant for people who, had a clear-cut path. And I was very keen that I wanted to do economics and I wanted to study from Delhi University. But then my father came up to me and told me that, why don't you apply to this college and open up your options? And I said, okay, I reluctantly did apply to Kriya in the first place. But then I went for the Kriya immersive case. And that's when I kind of understood what liberal arts and science education means and what an interwoven learning entails. Because during the KIC, I actually understood what type of learning I'll get. It's not going to be a rote learning, which I resented that a lot. And I understood that it's more of thinking through things and understanding that, and then developing your own thoughts about it. It's not something preset notions of what people have written and then, just vomiting it out on paper. And I really like that. And that's where my whole myth about liberal arts education just got shattered that very minute. And back then, my research was very limited because at that time, the concept of liberal arts education was not even that widespread that you had so many articles and, newspaper readings about, all of this, especially in India. You had this coming up in different parts of the world, but not in India. And the only sort of example I had was Ashoka. So I had to relate with it and kind of understand from their perspective of what it means.
Right. And Advait, I think you're back. How did you get to know about liberal arts?
Sorry, I had lots of internet issues. But I think for me, I grew up in Delhi. So for my high school years. So there I came across a lot of people who wanted to do politics, wanted to do history, wanted to do psychology, and most of them applied for the Delhi University, right? And that was a very different kind of education environment where people were doing things other than engineering and other than medicine. And that's where I first heard about places like Ashoka, which were offering liberal arts education. And once I got to know about that, then I think Kriya was soon on the list. He also came to our school. So that's how I heard about the idea of liberal arts education. And I didn't really know that it would be, I honestly thought it would be something which is similar to what other colleges like Delhi University or Osmania University have. But it turned out to be something very different. So I kept learning about what liberal arts meant even after coming to Kriya.
Right. Nanta, you can take forward from here.
So yeah, no matter what we all talk about liberal arts education and anything, it's always at the end of the day, what is future gonna hold us? So to take up on that, I would like to ask any of you to explain what are your career plans after graduation. And yeah, Advait, why don't you tell us about what are your career plans?
I don't have plans which are set in stone yet. Kani ippudarku em alochante I am doing my 4th year at Kriya as well. I do extra research in my 4th year, which is something which Kriya offers to students as well. Dan tarvata, I would probably, there are like a few things that I can do. Obviously, there is the route of writing the civil service examinations, which my parents really want me to do, but I'm not that keen about. So we'll have to see about that. But apart from that, I have lots of, because I've done lots of internships with corporate think tanks, with different professors, etc. I have lots of research experience which I can use to get a job in a corporate think tank. So that is one of the opportunities that I have, and that's probably something I would want to explore further. In the Tarvata, if I have the chance, a master's probably.
Oh, there is for sure something like very good thing Kriya is offering. And Ravi, do you want to share about?
Yeah, so like Advait, none of my plans are set in stone, and I don't want to work immediately out of college. I want to study some more, and my options are kind of wide. So I can choose to pursue a master's degree in a more specialized field of economics, or I can choose to go to law school after my undergrad. And I'm also very sure that I can segue like what I'm doing right now into data science, although I still need to like look into the finer aspects of how that would work. But right now, I'm just doing the best I can to keep all of my options open.
Yeah, that's really nice. So one of many things about Kriya is like, we follow an interwoven learning approach here. And for whom you all might be wondering, what is interwoven learning approach? It basically means the interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary method that integrates different areas of study and exposes students to a variety of disciplines. Like we at Kriya have this whole teaching, learning, research, and life will prepare students for the challenges the future holds and helping us to unpack a complex and intricate tapestry of relationship among humans, machines, and nature in ways that will transform the world. And also this whole education model at Kriya provides us a platform for me and many of youngsters like me at Kriya to learn how to connect and integrate this knowledge, which thereby supports us to apply these learnings in the real world scenarios. So this is what I think about interwoven learning approach. So I want to like hear about all of your thoughts, like quote unquote, what interwoven learning approach is to you, and how is like your learning experience inside and outside the classroom. And I would like to ask Smriti to like share her views.
Sure. Thanks, Nandita, for that question. I think I'll just take my first year for example. It's where we got the concept of interwoven learning in the first place, right? We have about 11 core skills and courses that we have to do, and all of this are compulsory. So regardless of you knowing math or not knowing math, you will be taught about it. And I feel that that is a very simple, small stepping stone towards understanding anything about your major in itself. Because it's not like in economics or environmental studies, you're not going to come up with questions of ethics or of philosophy. All of this are in tune of what you're learning. They're always going to be a small aspect of what you're learning. And in my major, I apply a lot of this environmental philosophical questions, environmental ethics comes, and these are all important courses in my graduation. Apart from that, this is also translated into even your work that you do, even the internships that you take. You have to apply certain amount of compassion towards whatever work you're doing. And that comes from these philosophical or ethical lenses that you're taught through in your first year. Apart from that, we also learn about, the science-centric courses and the number-centric numeric courses, which is data analytics. We're learning about scientific temperament, scientific reasoning. All of this is very important even in your work because you're constantly reading through material and trying to make your own analytical judgment. And I feel like that kind of helped me a lot in my 2 years of internships that I've done. And I've understood a lot about, how to translate my academic knowledge into something that is more translatable in the real world situation.
Yeah, thank you, Smriti, for that. And Lochna, would you like also to share your experiences with what are your interwoven learning approaches?
Sure. So till now, we used to see, or at least I used to see, subjects as things that are exclusive or entities with unshared boundaries, right? What interwoven learning basically does is, as Nandita has mentioned, it gives you that ability to find gray areas. It gives you that ability to read between lines, the ability to apply the knowledge that you have acquired in one discipline to a very different discipline, right? So whether be it via classes, seminars, we are, at least, I mean, we in the first year are able to identify and appreciate those gray areas. So, and honestly, the number of intersections and the correlations that we have found, or we were able to find in the first year, are so many that we, at one point, we decided to stop using the word interwoven, or the I word. So yeah.
Monica, would you also like to go ahead and explain what is interwoven learning approaches to you?
Definitely. So at least my understanding of the world is that no subject in itself can exist in isolation. But in college, in conventional college, we are taught one particular subject. But in general, if you go to let's say a tech company, they have a social part of it. They try to interact with the audience, and that's not taught in your classical engineering, right? But definitely my understanding of interwoven learning is that you look through a subject through a lens of the other. And I think that is definitely what Kriya first year gave me an insight into. I could explore different subjects. For example, our presentation in philosophy was the intersection of philosophy and law in one of the cases in the US. Or for example, even ethics, right? We could touch upon different topics, right? From climate ethics to artificial intelligence and ethics related to it. So even with respect to outside the classroom, let's say I'm working as a research assistant with one professor, Professor Rohan, who teaches economics. And what I essentially do there is to mix data with the concepts of economics. So economics in itself or computer science in itself don't go in isolation here, but they're mixed together through the form of data. So I think that is the core of Kriya, both inside and outside the classroom. And I think that's a way for exploration, which is very important for a student, which I feel.
Thank you. That's really insightful, actually. And it's kind of also different from what we third years have and different from what you have.
Right. And definitely the next question is also something related to this, that there's a big perception among students and parents that, liberal arts is, very easy and academic pressure is very low compared to, let's say, the other degrees or your conventional engineering or medical colleges. So I'd like each of the panelists to tell us a bit about, your typical day at Kriya so that our audience gets a sense of how light these days are. So Advait, why don't you go first?
There is actually quite a lot of work to be done in even in Kriya University, unfortunately. And I think what I can compare this with, for example, is that my friends in Delhi University do next to no work compared to what politics and history majors at Kriya do. ఎందుకంటే అక్కడ ఏం లేదు, ఒక 1 month ఎండింగ్ ఒక పేపర్ ఇవ్వమంటారు, అది ఎప్పుడో 5 ఏళ్ల క్రితం ఎవరో రాసి పెట్టుంటారు, అది కాపీ చేసేసి ఇచ్చేయడమే, ఇంకేముండదు. Kani, like here you can't do all of that, because not only because it's stricter, you have to reach a certain level of quality for your papers, but also because of how the university itself is constructed, how all the professors, you're in the same class with them, they know you very well. You won't find the same in other colleges. Even if you want to do something which is non-engineering, non-medical, even in those fields, I think the workload is substantially more at Kriya University and like in liberal arts colleges as compared to non-liberal arts colleges.
I could go next and talk about my experience. I don't think I've ever had a light day, as say, in Kriya, except for maybe my summer vacations, but that time also I'm usually doing my internships. So, or if there's a festival, maybe one odd day I'll have a light day. But my day usually starts off with getting ready for 1.5 hour classes. I mean, these classes themselves are very, very long, and you need to prepare for that. And it's not like you go half-hearted, do one reading and come. These are like 30 pages reading. You need to read between the lines, understand what they're talking about, so that you have good discussions in class. And that's what you're going to take away. Our Kriya pedagogy is in itself made with a lot of discussion-oriented sort of classes. And without that, you can't really do your assignments for instance, right? Our assignments come from class discussions. They are rooted within our class discussions. And if you don't pay attention, it's not going to work out. And so you need to prepare for that. You need to sit for group work. One of the pillars of Kriya pedagogy is working with groups. And in a day, you will have 2 to 3 meetings. I think all of us have been in continuous back-to-back 2-hour meetings for different courses. We do 4 courses or 5 courses in a trimester, and that itself is like really taxing. But then we have our own individual workload as well as group workload that we always keep doing, and allows us to work on the side. So we are doing internships, we're doing externships, we're also volunteering on our own. So, our day is definitely not light. It's extremely extensive. And even sometimes it goes to the weekend that, we're working in the weekend also. So it's definitely not the preconception of it being light or easy.
Definitely. And it's not an easy task like people assume. But Lochna, I think you can give a better insight into this.
Yeah, sure. So this is actually a standard question that I get from my friends and family members too. Okay, what is there to study in liberal studies and all that? But let me tell you, at Kriya, we have a jam-packed schedule. Especially coming from a science background, as Advait has mentioned, I can assure that whatever is taught at Kriya is same as something that's taught in any engineering college. And unlike them, we just have 3 months to complete our syllabus. Like they have a semester system, we have a trimester system, right? So, and our academic benchmarks are pretty high, and even our grading system is very different in the sense that at Kriya we have continuous grading system in the sense that our class participation, weekly assignments, projects, write-ups, midterms, end terms, everything carry weightage in your final grade. అండ్ ఈ వర్క్ లోడ్ ఒక్కొక్కసారి ఎంత అలవాటు అయిపోతుందంటే కొన్నిసార్లు ఒక అసైన్మెంట్ లేకపోతే ఒక రోజు నేను మా వేరే వాళ్ళ ఫ్రెండ్స్ కాల్ చేసి నిజంగా అసైన్మెంట్ లేదా ఈ రోజు అని అడిగిన సందర్భాలు ఉన్నాయి. సో యా, ఈవెన్ ఇఫ్ యూ లీవ్ అకాడమిక్స్ విత్ ఆల్ యువర్ స్పీకర్ సిరీస్, externships, internships, webinars, club activities, there's something going on. There's so many things happening simultaneously at Kriya.
Yeah, I think that is so true. I'd like to come to the one of the questions that those were also asked during one of the sessions before in the chat, that is liberal education truly affordable for normal, let's say, Indian middle class or a general audience we're targeting? Advait, why don't you go ahead first, followed by Lochna?
Thank you for that question, Sharmika. I think this is something which most people feel, that liberal education, or in general in India, private education itself is not affordable for most people, right? And then liberal education is even more expensive within that private education bracket. And so most people have this conception that liberal education is not something which we can afford. So I remember, but there are like a few things which I think I would like to share with everyone, and which I also got to know when I first wanted to enter into the liberal education field, is that firstly, Kriya University itself has a very extensive financial aid program. So some of you might go and check our website and see that, okay, there is like 8 lakhs per year, that's the fee, right? But if I go to my Nana and Nana, help for SLC, I think నాకు కూడా Kriya University నేను జాయిన్ అయినప్పుడు ఇప్పుడు నాకు కూడా 60% కంటే ప్లస్ ఫైనాన్షియల్ ఎయిడ్ ఇచ్చారు. ఆ ఎయిడ్ మొత్తం మెరిట్ పైన ఉంటుంది. అంటే మెరిట్ అంటే మీరు ఒకసారి క్వాలిఫై అయిపోయినారు అడ్మిషన్ కోసం, అప్పుడు మీ ఫైనాన్షియల్ పరిస్థితి ఎట్లుంది, స్టేటస్ ఎట్లుంది, అది మొత్తం చూసినాక సరే మీకు ఇంత ఎయిడ్ ఇవ్వచ్చు అని అది డిసైడ్ అవుతుంది. ఇది కాకుండా ఇప్పుడు మన ఆంధ్ర సర్కారు 2 రూల్ పెట్టింది. ఒకటేమంటే, ఒకటి ఎవరైనా ఆంధ్ర స్టూడెంట్ ఉంటే వాళ్ళు ఆంధ్రాలో ఏ ప్రైవేట్ కాలేజ్కి వెళ్ళినా అక్కడ యూ కాంట్ చార్జ్ ఆంధ్ర స్టూడెంట్స్ మోర్ దెన్ ఐ థింక్ సమ్ 90,000 1 lakh, ఏదో ఒక నెంబర్ ఉంది, కరెక్ట్ గా తెలియదు. అందుకని 8 lakh ఫీజ్ అయితే అసలు లేనే లేదు ఆంధ్ర స్టూడెంట్స్ కి. The most amount of money that an Andhra student would be asked to pay is like not going to be more than 1 lakh. ఇంకా దానిపైన ఇంకొక రూల్ ఏముందంటే డొమిసైల్ స్టేటస్ ఉంది. అయితే 25 to 30% ఎంతో డొమిసైల్ కోటా ఉంటుంది ఆంధ్ర స్టూడెంట్స్ కి. అయితే ఇప్పుడు అనుకోండి, ఇప్పుడు 30 స్టూడెంట్స్ ఉండాలి ఆంధ్ర నుంచి 100 స్టూడెంట్స్ బ్యాచ్ లో. 20 స్టూడెంట్స్ కి సరే మీరు ₹1,00,000 కట్టచ్చు, వాళ్ళు కట్టగలిగే స్తోమత ఉంది, వాళ్ళని తీసుకున్నారు. మిగతా 10 మందికి ఆ ₹1,00,000 కూడా కట్టలేరు అనుకో, అప్పుడు క్రియా వాళ్ళకి ఎట్లాగో అట్లా ఇంకా ఫైనాన్షియల్ ఎయిడ్ ఇవ్వాల్సింది, ఎందుకంటే డొమిసైల్ కోటా అయితే రీచ్ అవ్వాల్సిందే కదా. అందుకని ఇప్పుడు స్టూడెంట్స్ ఫ్రమ్ ఆంధ్ర హ్యావ్ అ బ్రిలియంట్ ఆపర్చునిటీ టు గెట్ education at Kriya University. Not only is Kriya University education in itself something which is affordable through Kriya's financial aid program. We have a 100% financial aid program as well, with monthly stipends for a few students whose financial situation is very bad. But also for students within Andhra, they have a better affordability and better chance to get an education at a place like Kriya as compared to the rest of India as well, because of these two rules: the fee cap, which is there in private university fees, and also the domicile quota.
Thank you so much, Advait. I think that's a great opportunity for students from Andhra Pradesh to really take that and just grab that into their thing. Lochna, I think you'll also be able to give a greater insight on this.
I guess Advait has summed it up, but then again, to reiterate, though the fee is high at Kriya, it's never an obstacle because students are given financial aid based on the financial status of the family instead of merit, right? So for that matter, I am also a student who is currently receiving a financial aid of 68% from the university. Nizanga inka cheppalante ma batch lo chaala mandi students ki 100% plus financial aid undi ante like university train charges kuda students kadutundi anamata vaalla inti nunchi university ki raavadaniki. So if you happen to be the person which Kriya is looking for, then I don't think fee is a problem.
Definitely. Nandita, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Lochna. Thanks for the really understanding thing that everyone is looking forward to. And then to understand it, truly understanding the essence of liberal arts, could all of you just give a one sentence or as a suggestion, what you would suggest as students of liberal arts to create awareness and emphasis on liberal education? Maybe Advait, you could go first.
I think అన్నిటికంటే మొత్తం ఫస్ట్ ఏం చేయాలంటే, చాలా మందికి లిబరల్ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ అంటే అఫోర్డబుల్ ఉండదు. మన దగ్గర అన్ని డబ్బులు లేవు, మనం అఫోర్డ్ చేయలేము అని అనుకుంటారు. దానివల్ల వాళ్ళకి ఎడ్యుకేషన్ ఛాన్స్ ఉన్నా సరే, చాలా మంది అఫోర్డ్ చేయలేరు, కానీ కొద్ది ఆపర్చునిటీస్ ఉన్నాయి. ఇప్పుడు తెలంగాణలో ఇట్లా పెద్ద యూనివర్సిటీ ఇంకా కట్టలే, అక్కడ కోటా లేదు, క్రియా అంటే కోటా లేదు, ఇక్కడ బిస్కెట్ అయిపోయారు. కానీ ఆంధ్ర స్టూడెంట్స్ ఆ మంచి ఛాన్స్ ఉంది. అందుకని ఐ థింక్ ద ఫస్ట్ అండ్ ఫార్మోస్ట్ థింగ్ ఇస్ టు get this message out, us as liberal arts students, that liberal arts is affordable in some circumstances at least. And if it is affordable, if you think that this is the right fit for you, if a student thinks that they want to do politics, they want to do history, they want to do economics. నాకు సార్ గుర్తుంది, నేను నానమ్మకి అంటే ఎవరో గ్రాండ్ ఆంట్, ఆ నానమ్మకి ఏం చదువుతున్నావు అంటే ఎకనామిక్స్ అని చెప్పారు, హిస్టరీ అండ్ పాలిటిక్స్ అని చెప్పలేదు. వాళ్ళు అయ్యో పాపం అనేసారు, అట్లా ఇంజనీరింగ్ చేయట్లని ఆగలే కూడా. అందుకని ఐ థింక్ లిబరల్ ఆర్ట్స్ స్టూడెంట్స్ అవేర్నెస్ ఒకటే కాకుండా ఇది ఒకటి అఫోర్డబుల్ గా కూడా ఉంది. ఎవరికైనా ఇంట్రెస్ట్ ఉంటే వాళ్ళని ఈ ఫీల్డ్ లో కాస్త ఎంకరేజ్ చేయడం. I think that's the biggest thing that we as liberal arts students can do.
I think adding on to Advait's point is that us as liberal arts students, at least I face the problem of not being informed. And I think that us liberal arts students need to start creating a conversation in the first place about liberal arts education and what it actually is and what all it can actually do for all of us. Because especially with the NEP also coming in, there's a lot of change in the way the pedagogy is going to be. And what's a better time than this to actually start the conversation, because there is going to be a shift even in the middle school education and higher school education. So it's better to start having conversation as much as possible, so that everyone is at least knowledgeable or at least understand what it is.
Ravi, why don't you also give us few insights? Ravi?
Right. Okay. So in my experience, when I tell people that I attended liberal arts college, quite a few people, they just seem to be under the impression that liberal arts colleges don't offer any of the sciences. And that's a pretty big misconception. And I'm very sure that it's not the last. People don't know enough about liberal arts colleges, and clearing up misconceptions is a pretty good way to start discussions on the value of liberal arts.
Yeah, you're right. Lochna, why don't you go ahead, which will be followed with Chamika?
So considering the fact that liberal studies is new to everybody, especially to the people of Andhra Pradesh, I guess we should collectively work towards bringing a change in the way people look at academics, that it is okay to choose the untrodden path. It is okay to do something that not a majority of students are taking, right? As Advait has mentioned, నేను కూడా చాలా మంది నేను లిబరల్ ఆర్ట్స్ చేస్తున్నానంటే బాగానే చదువుతున్నావు కదమ్మా, ఎందుకమ్మా బీఎస్సీ నీకు బిఏ, నువ్వు బాగా చదవట్లేదా, ఈ గుంపులో గోవింద ఎందుకమ్మా వెళ్ళిపో అమ్మా. So yeah, these kinds of things. But I guess if we are able to bring that fundamental change in the way people look at academics, that it is okay to choose something that is not taken by a lot of people, I guess that would be sufficient.
I'd go next. Honestly, I couldn't agree any lesser to whatever everyone said. And one thing I'd mention is that liberal arts isn't like a new thing that's coming in. It's just looking at the education in an explorative manner, in the right way, I'd say. So it's not like a big jargon that we have to use here and there, but just truly understand what you're interested in. One thing I'd say that things you're taught in school are very different from things you're taught in college. For example, I loved math in school, but I came to Kriya and realized that math is probably not my thing, you know? So that is very important to understand in the first place. So it's not a new thing that you're bringing in, that, you know, liberal arts inculcate in your school and all that. It's just understanding where your passion and aptitude together merge. And that's where, you know, you get that exposure in Kriya in the first year, which is the same thing in my case. I realized I like economics by taking MPC in my, 11th and 12th grade, which is way different. So it's to truly understand who you are as a person. I think such a curriculum is extremely necessary, and making sure that you're pointing out to this necessity is the first step that we can take to creating larger awareness.
Yeah, and just to share my own experience, I don't think I would less any with whatever Advait and Lochna said. నేను వెళ్ళి క్రియా యూనివర్సిటీలో చదువుతుంటే ఈమ్మా ఏలూరులో కాలేజెస్ లేవా, అంత దూరం వెళ్ళి ఎందుకమ్మా చదువుకుండా, ఇక్కడ చదువుకోపోయావా, డిగ్రీ కోసం అంత దూరం ఎందుకు? So I think we need to burst the myth there that liberal arts shouldn't be like, you know, something less to like look to. It's just always we look in a very, I mean, we are provided with very two options. It's just like either you do engineering or medicine. That's it. You're not really given a wide variety of options. And in fact, I would say that we aren't allowed to see a wide variety of options over there. And I think that's where like schools should play an integral role of like introducing students to different kinds of courses and all. So then I don't think any of us would like face the problem of like, why are you studying liberal arts on the first place? So yeah.
All right. I think with this, we come to the end of the session, the panel that we've had here, which is beautifully explained the whole concept of liberal arts. Thank you so much to each one of you. I think I've learned a lot from your experience. I relate to each of it. And without further ado, I mean, most of you are probably getting late from your schedule. Thank you so much for taking your time. Khadija and Rachna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Charmika. All of you had such like interesting insights, and all of it I'm going through firsthand now, since all of you seniors have sort of put down a path already for us first years to go through. So thank you for that. And it has been a very interesting conversation all throughout this evening, because like it has it's honestly so beautiful to see that people actually see that there needs to be a change. And honestly, it is true that the road less traveled is not any road that you shouldn't take. It's just as great. And arts and sciences should not be taken as a choice. It should be taken as a okay, something fell. I'm sorry if you heard some noise. Everything's fine. So it should be taken more as a choice than just like a last option. And it's been a very eye-opening conversation. And we thank you so much for all of you that have attended and stayed up till now and have contributed to this very interesting conversation, especially the ISMA and all of Kriya fraternity, the parents, the teachers, everyone here, the students. You have really cultivated this sense of a conversation that needs to go forward. And all of this is the end of the session. It's just the beginning of a very important conversation, at least in our state. And I'm very proud of that. Rachna, you can go on.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much. I'm here to thank everyone and just close this conference. So I'd like to begin by thanking Mr. Srikant and the entire Independent School Management Association team for co-organizing this beautiful conference and believing that Kriya University shall pioneer liberal education into the minds of not only educators, but eventually students and parents. And this is the first stepping stone. Throughout the day, we've heard all our wonderful speakers, panelists, talking so much about how much the need for a change is there in a state like Andhra Pradesh. And even I am half Telugu, name kuda Andhra nunche. So I just like to begin by giving one example. I studied BIPC. Of course, 10th tarvata 11th and 12th లో BIPC తీసుకోవాలని చెప్పారు. తర్వాత BIPC తీసుకున్నాక చాలా ఆప్షన్స్ లేవు. నేను ఇప్పుడు ఐఎమ్ హెడింగ్ అవుట్ రీచ్ ఫర్ ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్, కర్ణాటక ఫర్ క్రియా యూనివర్సిటీ. బట్ I did my bachelor's in nursing. చదువుకునింది 4 years nursing. సో అక్కడి నుంచి తర్వాత మార్కెటింగ్ చేసి ఇక్కడికి రావడం. This is an example. I'm sure through the day you've heard different speakers, also our students talk about how you can change and make that shift in your career. But we are all live examples for you to believe that it is possible and it is very much necessary. Andhra Pradesh is not an exception. We have always had very bright minds who have gone into the best of institutions, not only in the country, but also abroad. But yes, liberal arts and sciences is also very much needed, and you should look at exploring it. I'd like to also thank IAS Akunuri Murali sir for connecting us with Rajshekhar sir and helping us reach out to the government. Also, all the panelists, my keynote speakers, Shri Rajshekhar, Kapil Vishwanathan, Dr. Mahesh Rangarajan, the panelists, again, Mr. Srikant, Dr. Paral, Ms. Nardana, Dr. Prithvi, Dr. Shiva, our moderator, Ms. Bhakti Shah, my boss. And of course, the students, the beautiful students who co-hosted this, Khadija, Charmika, Smriti, Advait, Nandita, Ravi, Lochana, and my entire team, the IT team of Kriya, Bhakti again, Ridhiman, Arun, Prabhu, and Akshay. And last but not the least, all you attendees who stayed back. I see 70 attendees here and many more on YouTube who have stayed back till the end, followed the entire conversation. Please keep in touch. As I mentioned, I'm the outreach manager for Andhra Pradesh. I'll leave my email ID in the chat box. And of course, Srikant sir also has my credentials. If you'd like Kriya to conduct any sessions, skill development, personality development, admissions related, or anything at all, please reach out to us and we'd like to collaborate and help you. Srikant sir, do you have anything, any parting thoughts for us?
Nothing. Yeah, I mean, like I enjoyed listening to your students. And yes, this generation students, it's predicted that they would change 3 careers on an average, and of course, 15 jobs. So that's the prediction, which might be changing. But then, yes, studying this interwoven thing would be very much helpful for them, because if they have to change the careers instead of just going in one option, at least they will have that basic foundation of probably understanding and easily moving into another career if the situation demands, because we don't know how the world would look like after 10-20 years. I mean, as Bhakti was telling about the 2022, I was also part of IKRI, so I have already know that document. So yes, any other documents that we see how the world would look like after 5-10 years, it's unpredictable. So it's good. Good luck, all the students. Thank you.
Thank you very much and have a very happy weekend, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.